I suspect you all already know British author David Almond, whom I have the pleasure of introducing today. But just in case, he's the winner of Ibby's Hans Christian Andersen Award, as well as the Carnegie Medal, the White Bread Children's Book Award, the Michael Prince Award, the Nestle Smarties Prize, and the Boston Globe Hornbook Award, and many, many more awards. His first children's novel, Skellig, which is the story of a strange, part-human creature who transforms the lives of two children forever, was published to immediate acclaim in 1998. It was followed the next year by Kate's Wilderness, his second novel, which was inspired by his childhood in memories of disused mind in the north of England. In truth, each of Almond's books has been creative, original, and boundary-breaking, and each has received critical acclaim. His most recent U.S. publications, and you notice there's a S on the end of publications, are all 2015 books, beginning with The Tightrope Walker, then moving on to A Song for Ella Gray, and finally, in this year, A Life in Pictures. And since he has them all piled up here, I didn't have to do show and tell. But now, please join me in welcoming David Almond.
Thank you very much. It's fantastic to be here and to see so many old friends and to see this wonderful audience at this great conference. The first thing I want to say is to say thank you. Thank you to my readers and supporters in the United States. It's been really heartwarming and fantastic for me to have my work welcomed so well into this great country. Especially the Tightrope Walkers was mentioned. The Tightrope Walkers is actually a really northern book. I come from the northeast of England, and it's kind of written in Geordie, which troubles a lot of people in England that think surely you can't have literary works produced in Geordie, because that's uncivilized. But actually, I learned a lot about writing from reading American authors. So I think my kind of northeastern language is actually deeply influenced by American authors who I've loved, like Ernest Hemingway and Raymond Carver. And especially southern states writers like Flannery O'Connor and William Goyen. I learned how to be a northern writer by reading some of your southern states writers. So thank you. And it's wonderful to come to the home of those so many fantastic writers. I've actually done a PowerPoint, which is incredibly unusual for me. But I've used it a couple of times recently to give some images. The trouble with PowerPoint is it's very linear. And the brain doesn't work like that. You know, I think the mind is it's a kind of spontaneous thing, and things happen simultaneously inside the brain, as they do in the universe. You know, the universe doesn't proceed through linear progression. The universe proceeds through a kind of inward growth, a spontaneous generation. And I think that's what creativity is. Creativity is something coming from within and expanding and opening out. It's like when a beast grows or a flower grows or a plant grows, you don't stick an extra bit on the top. It kind of grows from the heart of itself, and I think that's what creativity is. And it's also chaotic. So I've given this a kind of title, Chaos and Creation, Beautiful Illusions and Beautiful Mess. A beautiful illusion. This is why we're here. You know, this is what we love. We love the printed book, and aren't they lovely? Look at that, isn't that gorgeous? You don't even have to read it. Look at that, isn't that fantastic? I fell in love with this, I think, when I was a baby. When I was just a baby, a few months old, I used to go to my Uncle Amos's printing shop in my mother's arms. He used to print the local newspaper. And my mum said that when I was just a baby, when I saw the printed pages coming off the bottom of the printing machines, I would jump up and down and point and giggle and laugh at the printed pages coming off the rollers. Goo, goo, ga, 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 ga. And I think that's what I still love about writing. People say, why do you write? And I think one of the reasons I write is for that. I want to produce this because I think it's deeply, deeply beautiful. And I think probably I began to fall in love with that when I was a baby. And of course, you couldn't go to that little David Almond and say, what do you want to be, son? I want to be a writer. But the image of print got into my brain. And just like so many people here, I love it. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous thing. I'm a great believer in the kind of physicality of things, the kind of textures of things, the feel of things. I was delighted to hear recently, I heard a radio program. I've got nothing against Kindles, against e-reading, but I was delighted to hear that actually in some shops in the UK, they're stopping selling Kindles now because they've died out. They've reached their peak. This is the thing that will never reach its peak. And it's the thing that will go on. And at times when you say that, people think, oh, you're being romantic. It's not romantic at all. You know, the book as an object, the stuff within it is a physical thing. It's not some kind of digital, abstract thing. It comes from the body. So it's lovely, but it's a kind of illusion. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? You know, look at all these beautiful books lined up on shelves. My desire to become a writer was also generated in a library which, again, it's interesting that a lot of people started to say libraries don't matter anymore, we'll close them down because people just need to get a Kindle. How wrong that is. You know, I think the physical book, the library, the bookstore are just so important to our culture. But they are illusions, you know, they're kind of tricks. Where did it all start? You know, it's one of the things I love to think of as being a writer. And all of us here, we're taking part in something that began thousands and thousands of years ago, many, many generations ago, in places like this, in caves. And if you think about it, this is a bit like a cave, and that is a bit like the cave wall. And there is the piece of art from a cave wall from thousands and thousands of years ago. And this is where storytelling began. Storytelling began when hundreds of people got together in a cave to protect themselves from the outside world, to feed themselves, to keep warm, but also to tell stories. And if you go into some of these caves, which have these amazing things inside them, you can imagine the storyteller with his torch, you know, a flaming torch, pushing it across the image so that the image seems to flicker and come to life. And while he's doing that, he's telling the story, he's chanting the story and moving his body to the rhythm of the story. That's where it comes from. The book is our current way of doing it. And the book is it's a piece of technology that has grown through generations and through thousands of years. But it all began back then. We are still part of that tradition. It's not different. And then we had writing which came, and if you look at early writing, this is Egyptian hieroglyphics. The thing I love about this is it's pictures. It's pictures. The first writing was pictures. So it comes from the voice, storytellers telling stories. Then it becomes pictures. And I think we as lovers of children's books get that, don't we? We know, you know, that the word and the picture are together, the word and the picture are together. It goes right back through time. One of the things I love about being a children's author is that you can never forget that in the sort of child's growth, it begins with picture books. And again, we had a few mad statements a few years ago saying things like, the picture book is dead. And you just think, how boring, you know. How crazy is that, to think that the picture book is dead? Picture book is not dead because it has its roots right back in ancient caves, has its roots right back in Egyptian hieroglyphics. And what will our children do without wonderful picture books, the great art form that we all love? Then we developed. This is some pages from an illuminated manuscript, the Lindisfarne Gospels. The Gospels come from beside where I live. They come from an island called Lindisfarne. And look how gorgeous it is. Look how beautiful it is. This was made by one monk. He created the whole Gospels using inks, the skins of animals, the blood of animals, the sap of plants, ground down stones. He used sticks, he used pieces of metal, he used brushes, and he produced these great, great artworks, which are everlasting. And again, I think we can see the roots of especially children's books in this. You know, there are so many children's books which kind of, you can see that they grow from this. So children's books aren't some kind of fanciful, marginal, you know, thing that can be overlooked. We know that they're central to human culture. You look at things like this and you realize actually they are. You know, we aren't just saying this, that this is where our books come from. Again, beautiful example of print. Look, and I often say, people say to me, what should I do if I want to write? And I'll say lots of things, but in the end I say, well, make it lovely. Make it as lovely as you can do. And I think the urge to make something beautiful is the thing that pushes us to be creative. Because we know if we make something beautiful, the reader, the onlooker, the viewer will respond with a kind of love as well. And look how gorgeous that is. Look at the amount of care and talent and dedication that went into producing that. So making things lovely, no matter how dark things might be, make it as lovely as it can. So a kind of lovely, lovely darkness. And this is a page from one of my notebooks. My books end up like that. Isn't that lovely? And people take these off the shelves and say, hey, that David Almond, look how tidy he is. Look how neat he is. Hey, I wish my mind was like that. When I go to see kids in schools, I talk to kids in festivals, I always take my notebooks along and I show them. Because I say, I used to look at these books when I was a lad and going into the library and saying, I want to do this, I want to produce these things. But then I think, but I'll never be able to do that. That looks impossible. It's too perfect. And I think they are too perfect. Perfection is an illusion. The illusion is played by great, wonderful cultural geniuses called publishers. Publishers who are, such hugely important cultural people and institutions. Publishers take the work of writers and artists and make them look as if they're just perfect. But we all know it's a kind of trick. So when one of my books is made, I do this first of all, I scribble and scroll, and then I go to my computer and print it out, and then eventually the book comes out. But that's where it all starts, because where it all starts is inside here, inside the human mind. And the human mind is not perfect. We all have heads which are just about that big, they're tiny, and inside is stuff storming about. That's more like the inside of my head. And it's interesting, I made this for a book called Counting Stars. And that turned out to be one of the stories in Counting Stars. And this is 3 years before I wrote Skellig. And somehow from the back of my mind, in the top corner, I drew a figure with wings on. Yeah. So somehow that thing was generating inside my mind. And that's a kind of example of the subconscious at work. And I think one of the things, certainly in England, that is overlooked in the education of children is the deep importance of the subconscious mind. Because how do you legislate for that? How do you test how well the subconscious mind's working? But my subconscious mind was working there. This is another notebook page, and this is, it's a blend of pictures and doodles and cartoons and scribbles and ideas. And the thing that came from that was the tightrope walkers. So that was the first plan for the tightrope walkers. So it's got fish, it's got boats, it's got dead people, it's got fish swimming along, it's got a guy at the top there stepping across a tightrope at the top. And that was my plan for a tightrope walkers. So that's what the brain is like. The brain doesn't work. Sentences are linear, but the brain is much more kind of spontaneous and simultaneous. So yeah, that turned into that, thanks to a fantastic publisher called Candlewick Press, who I love deeply. I love publishers. We had a mad thing in England a few years ago when there was a lot of debate around age banding in books, and people said, we shouldn't allow children to read books too early, so therefore we need to age band things. And some authors try to set up this conflict between the artists, the writers, and publishers. And some writers were saying some crazy things about publishers, like, they don't care, they're just these mindless kind of titans. I don't agree with that, and I'm not just saying that because Candlewick are here today. I truly believe it. I think without publishers, we are nothing. The universe, the universe is chaos. The universe began in chaos. The universe began in nothingness. And the great thing about the universe is it kind of spontaneously arranges itself from within. So things scatter about just like they do in the human mind, but then they take shapes and they take forms, just like art, writing, stories take a form from the kind of chaos of the human mind and the chaos of the writers or artists' notebooks. And look at that beautiful thing, that gorgeous thing, wonderful, really beautiful, but it began in a just total chaos and mess. The universe cohered and made itself into what it is. I did have, and for some reason my PowerPoint, which I'm not too good at, I wanted to put a picture of a giraffe in. I wanted to put a picture of a giraffe in after the universe, because a giraffe is an amazing thing. A giraffe is a wonderful creature. But if at any point in the kind of evolution of a giraffe, at no point in the millions years generation of a creature called a giraffe, could you go and say the thing that will come out of this millions of years ago will produce a giraffe? You couldn't. But the progress of evolution produces a giraffe. And in the end, you see a giraffe, oh, what a beautiful thing that is. But at no point could you actually have predicted it. Just like at no point when I was doing my first notes could I have predicted exactly how the tightrope was coming out. So again, it's the kind of subconscious, it's chaos, kind of cohering and kind of creating itself, really. And then we have the thing that is, on the one hand, a challenge, an empty page. I always use notebooks with blank pages, because I think blank pages, which can be so challenging and so intimidating, are also just areas of great opportunity. And it's playful. You know, one of the things that I feel about being a children's writer, you see children play. And children at play are using their bodies, they're committing their whole bodies to something, they're committing their imaginations. Everything goes into producing what they do. And I think the sense of playing is just really so important. And again, you know, the thing that drives me balmy about a lot of education, especially for very young children, certainly in the UK, that play is not seen as something very important. I was talking to a friend the day before yesterday. Her 2-year-old is now going into a play group, and it had been tested, the play group had been tested by the government. And the report said, we don't think the children are being challenged enough. Yeah? And just, hang on. Yeah. I don't think I need to say any more about that. I think it's desperately wrong. I think it's desperately wrong to undermine the importance of play in our culture, and just to see education as some kind of fast track towards. Thank you. It's madness. It's total madness. And another thing, I was talking at a conference recently, and a woman was quoting a report that had been given on her child, 4-year-old, who had just begun to attend preschool, kindergarten, reception class, we call it in England. They do baseline assessments now in England. And when she was at 4, this girl had gone into school at 4 years old. They had tested her, and from that they were predicting what she would be studying and how she would be doing and how she would be failing or succeeding when she was 16. Yeah? And you just think, come on. You know, this is what children should be doing. And that sense of play is something that we can all gain from. And I did this because I was thinking, when children begin to write, they just mess about. They play, you know, felt tips play, crayons, pens. And also it's really interesting that that's like some of the early marks in cave paintings. The early marks in cave paintings, you see the outlines of hands. And so you see a direct link between children coming into the world and going right back to the beginning of human time. And it's also lovely, isn't it? We've got some great photographs of my daughter just covered in paint. The tools, you know, I love, whenever I give talks, obviously, and here's a question, like, who likes these? Who likes, what do you call them? I forgot what they're called. Pencil case. Who likes pencil case? Who likes pencil cases? I love pencil cases. Inside this pencil case are some of humanity's great inventions. A yellow highlighter. A pencil. with an eraser on the end. A Sharpie. A blue Sharpie. Who likes Sharpies? And it's like, who likes notebooks? All of the things, and I go and I talk about this, say, what's a serious published writer talking about these things for? I think these are, and it's like being a child again. To write, to do any art is to be childlike. And these are some of the tools that we use. The tendency, sometimes I'll go into schools and they'll say, well, we'll take you straight to the computer suite. I say, I don't want to go to the computer suite. I want some paper and pencils and pens and things that they can mess with, because the mess, the imperfection is the beginning of creativity, and these are some of the tools. Computer keyboard. I use the keyboard. I use the keyboards. I produce my manuscripts on a keyboard and on a computer screen. But I remember learning how to write, and I learned how to write in reception class. Again, talking about reception class. My wonderful reception class teacher, Mrs. Fagan, and she used to stand in front of a blackboard. She'd have a piece of white chalk, and she would make a mark on the blackboard and go, th, th, and we'd all go, th. And then would make the mark and go, th. And then she'd go, qu. We go, qu. And what it's doing is you're teaching your body how to write, how to make the marks. And I really believe your body is the thing that learns to write. I love my computer, but if you make the letter T on a keyboard, you go like that. If you make the letter Q on a keyboard, you go like that. You make a letter S on a keyboard, you go like that. But it seems to me that if we don't also learn that an S is like that, and if you think about young kids learning, that's how they learn. There's a big movements of their body that become finer and finer, and then we get to being able to tap on a computer keyboard. But to jump to that too early seems to me another form of madness. We have to learn how to use our bodies. Of course, this is just an example of a great masterpiece, Where the Wild Things Are. Again, it goes right back to the beginning of human time. It's like cave art, isn't it? It's like all picture books are in a sense like cave art. That's like the picture in the cave from thousands and thousands of years ago. It's also about madness and wildness, where the wild things are. And I think writing is a bit wild, just as our children are a bit wild. And good books are never quite civilized, just as good children are never quite civilized. The kind of urge for goodness can be bad for children, I think. A lot of these things I wouldn't have believed, I wouldn't have known how to say them, say 20 years ago when I first began. But the more I've gone on writing, the more I've kind of gone on doing this, I do believe there is a kind of madness which is involved in artistic creation and in being human and in being childlike. And I think books like this wonderful masterpiece really draw from that, the craziness of being human, the craziness of being young, the craziness of finding out what it means to exist in this stunning universe that we live in, some of which we've created, some of which was just there. And we all have one of these. If you look at the human head, everything's packed in very tight. It has a hard shell, and there's the tongue, the pipe for the air, the brain, the mind, and it's very small. It's just that size, and we all have one. But if you think about the universe, you look into the universe, and you're seeing stars that are billions of miles away, and some of them existed billions of years ago, and you turn your head towards it, and they enter you. So your head, which is just like that, is small space, is immense. It's the biggest thing, it's the most amazing thing in the known universe, and we each have one on our shoulders. And I think that artistic creation, writing, reading, are all parts of actually exploring this apparently confined space that we all have on our shoulders. And it's a way of opening it up and making it grand and making it marvelous. The lovely tools, we could just go on and on. People say, why do you write? I love writing because I love words. I love punctuation. I love full stops, periods. I love commas. I love quotation marks. I love the shapes of paragraphs. I love the pen, pencil, highlighter, Sharpies, the voice. I think we have to remember that words on the page have come from the voice. Another thing I love about writing for young people is that you're as close to a book on a shelf as you are to a parent or an adult telling a child a bedtime story, saying, once upon a time, I'll tell you about once upon a time. So the human voice and the published book are caught in the wonderful area of children's literature. All of these things, the blood, the blood retains memory, the heart beats, the body holds. I was brought up as a Catholic. My body knows how to be a Catholic because it knows how to do all of this. It was kind of bred into it, it was trained into me. Just as you learn how to write the letter S, so your body retains the shapes of the letter S. Each other, where would we be without each other? Why write? Why make art if we weren't doing it for someone else? So everybody. And we do it for the world, we want to reach out to the world. And, this great organization, IBI, is exactly about that. It's about going across the world and drawing us all together. We go to all countries. We speak to people who know all kinds of languages. Our books go across the world. Books from other parts of the country come to us. So and then the universe itself, So I think we are we're part of creation. And I think that's what it is. The word creation is, in fact, I think, a better one than creativity, because each time we make something, each time we do something, it's like the never-ending, onward-going process of creation. One of the things I'm doing at the moment, I've written the libretto for an opera, and it has a chorus of angels in it. And the director came to me the other day and she said, what is it that the angels really want? And I said, what they want is to be human. And I think that is it. We are wonderful because we're imperfect. We're not perfect. Angels are perfect. Angels desire to be imperfect. And this is a great quote from William Blake. Eternity is in love with the productions of time. They're imperfect, they're troubled, but they're also beautiful, and we try to make beautiful things from them. And then, why write for children? People say to me, what do you write for children for? What? That's not very interesting, is it? They're just daft, aren't they? They're just stupid. The great English poet Ted Hughes was one of those wonderful writers who wrote for adults, wrote for children, and didn't see any difference. He gave as much attention to his work for children as he did to it. And he said, every new child is nature's chance to correct culture's error. And I think that's the great thing about writing for young people. Each time they're born, the world is brand new. Each time they fall in love, nobody's ever fallen in love before. Each time they hurt themselves, nobody's ever hurt themselves before. So it's like each child is a new chance. Each child is a new world. Each child is a new opportunity. And I think that's why we kind of love this world of children's writing, of children's books, of children's literature. And one of the things I love about the children's book world, which I never thought I'd write for children. I thought I'm a sensible, grown-up, educated adult, so I'll write books for sensible, educated, grown-up adults, of course. And then found myself writing for children. Of course, I saw an interview a couple of years back with an English writer. He said, every writer worth their salt thinks that culture has reached its nadir. We don't believe that. And why do we do it? We make art with young people in order to recreate the world. And I think that's what we're doing. We're working to make a better world. We're trying to change the world because we're dealing with new worlds each time we work with children, or write for children, or make art for children. So thank you. But that's what I think. I think there is something very important, not in a kind of very, very important. It is just deeply culturally, historically, universally important, the world of children's books. And so I don't know if anyone has any questions at this point. Yes?
I want to know more about
The opera, some people came to me last year and they said, we're making an opera about football, about soccer. And at first I thought, how can that work? But then I thought, of course, And it's called Miracle because if you support the kind of teams that I support, you need a miracle. You need a miracle. So, and that's true about all sport, isn't it? I was actually in Boston when the Red Sox won the World Series. it was a miracle. So the opera, we hope, will produce a miracle in northeastern football clubs. But I love to get out and work with other people. You know, I love to collaborate with lots of people. Go on, ask me a question. Yes.
Could you tell us more about the origin of the tightrope walkers?
The tightrope walkers came from. It came really from a physical thing, which I remember when I was a little boy, and I'd put my hand against the wall of the house where I grew up, and it was covered in pebble dash, which is render, I think you called here. And I remember the imprint of the stones on my hand, and when I talk about it, now I can feel it. So I wanted to write about that, and I wanted to write about the old industry of Tyneside, the shipbuilding, and I wanted to tell the story of someone who was born into what may be seen as kind of challenging kind of cultural situation, but his desire to transcend that, but at the same time keeping close to it. So that's where it came from. So and also just the sights and sounds of a particular part of the world. Yeah.
What other kind of unusual genres you were thinking to write, like from book to libretto, the opera, where else?
I love to jump around, and I'm writing a play at the moment. I'm writing a play for a theatre, and then I'm writing another play. I'm doing an adaptation of a song for Ella Gray for another theatre, and I learned how to do that from children. You know, I went to a classroom when Skellig had just come out, and I told them the story of Skellig, and these were very young kids, and then two 6-year-old boys ran to me. They said, "That was fantastic, David. We're going into the yard now to act it out. He's Michael, I'm Skellig, how are you?" And they ran into the schoolyard and began to act this out. So a year or so after that, when a very distinguished theatre director came and he said, "Now then, David, I'd like you to write another stage adaptation of Skellig." I thought, And then I thought of those two little boys, and I thought, if they can do that, I can. Yeah. So I love to work on stage, and I'm writing songs for another stage play. And again, gaining heart from children. Yes.
David, your language in your books, there's very rich flavor from your part of the world. Do you make any changes for the American edition?
No, and that's, my publishers here are fantastic, because my books are filled with things that some people might find quite difficult, but they're just so, that's all right, we'll just put that in. Because why do we read? Why do we read? We read in order to hear other people's voices and to learn about other people's places. So no, I'm afraid not. So it has one of my books has a phrase, "I'm going to float the spring wellers." No, you haven't got a clue what that means, have you? But they're in there. And I think that's the beauty of language, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Is your editor in England or here, and how do you work with them?
My main editor's in England, so my books go first of all to Walker Books or to Hodder Children's Books, or title was with Penguin, with Puffin Penguin. So I love my editors, and I think editors, again, talking about publishers, editors are really important because they help you to, if you have the sense of a particular editor that you're writing a book for, they help to guide your thoughts even when you're not talking to them. And then a good editor will point to things that you think, oh, yeah, you think you're right. A bad editor will pick up something that is wrong, but I'm really fortunate in my editors that they do what I need, yeah. And I've got one editor in the UK, she's really good at desentimentalizing some of this stuff. She says, and she'll just point to us, say, "David," I said, "Oh no, we'll just take it out." Yeah. One more question, I know we have stuff here.
I'm curious about what you like to read.
I like to read all kinds of things. I read novels, at the moment I'm trying to educate myself in quantum physics, which is really hard. And I keep reading these books, and I think, I get that. I go, I don't get that. It's the maths that gets in the way. So, but that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. So I'm reading a lot about physics, because I just think, like the picture of the universe, the more I learn about how people think about the universe and about the particularity of nature, amazing and very poetic and very, very beautiful. So I'm reading about quantum physics and kind of getting nowhere, really, except just going, oh, really? Oh, really? Really? It's like there's nothing there. You know, if you took all the substance that is actually contained within human beings, if you took the actual stuff that's in human beings, apart from the energy and the space between atoms and the space between nucleus and electrons, you could fit it into something the size of a sugar cube. And I thought, well, amazing. And I think we'll have to stop there. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.